Hi there, and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome TurtleTree Labs, and we have Fengru Lin, the founder and CEO, and Max Rai, the founder and chief strategist. Hi, both of you. How are you doing?
Wonderful,
Good.
Adnan. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, great to have you here. And you're both in Singapore at the
That's
moment.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, and how's the situation today?
It's getting better for us. We're very fortunate that our labs are fully open. Scientists are able to continue their work. We have safety measures in place to assure that everyone can do this in a safe manner. But moving along pretty well.
So you have both created a really super interesting company. It would be great if you could tell me about the company and how you came up with the idea, first of all.
Sure. So before we jump into the company, maybe we can give a bit of a background about ourselves because there's
Sure.
that whole journey and it's a good story that we love to share.
Yes.
My background has always been in tech. I used to work for a lot of tech companies like Salesforce and Google. But as a hobby, I like to make cheese.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and that was how I started to get to know milk a lot better. I was in Indonesia, I was in Thailand, but it was really difficult to find good milk for cheese because of contract farming, because of hormones that are being pumped into the cows. So back then, it was quite sad for me. And I was working for Google then, and Max was actually in Google, and he was sharing about the future of technologies, and he shared about companies like Memphis Meats and Blue Nalu. After the talk, I went to him and asked him if we could use similar cell-based methods to make milk. Back then, there were nobody else doing it, so we started to do a lot of research, a lot of brainstorming. We pulled in some scientists, and all of us started to make several breakthroughs. Last year, we filed our patents, and this year we're scaling the company.
Yeah, and myself, from California, born and raised in Northern California, in the Bay Area, was a CEO of a tech company previously myself. That's how I came to Singapore. A lot of my work was around AI and machine learning. Singapore is at the cutting edge of technology, so I was invited to give a talk at the Google HQ here in Singapore. And during this discussion, I was sharing some of the interesting companies like Memphis Meats that's out there using cell-based technology to create meat. It's very exciting because this is where we believe sustainable agriculture will end up using these type of technology to create food. So after this talk, I met Fengru, and we started having this discussion around milk and how difficult it is to find good milk in Southeast Asia, number one, and how the current technologies that we're using fermentation and that we're using yeast to create certain components was great, but not what was necessary to create these high value products like cheese and butter and cream. You still need like fresh milk or so forth to be able to create a lot of that stuff. So that's when we started putting our heads together and started thinking. We brought in some cell biologists, some molecular biologists, some world-class scientists into the mix. We actually put in about $500,000 of our own cash at that time, and thought, okay, you know what, we're going to do something with this. We're going to explore this, and we put in all of our resources to do that. Several months later, we had some major breakthroughs. And we filed our patents, so we continue to scale up, and that's what we're doing today. But it's very exciting because it's not just bovine milk, it's human milk and all other types of mammals as well. So those are some really cool things we can talk about in a while.
Yeah. And so you're looking at this from stem cells. So you're actually using that as your base. And I know it's quite common, especially in like Singapore, when stem cells are extracted from babies to store for future use against future diseases. That approach how do you come up with that idea for that approach, and like how difficult is it to do that?
Well, you know, the concept or the science around what we are doing is actually not necessarily brand new. 20 years ago, cell biologists were using cells, mammalian mammary cells, to be able to create some of these things, but they were using it for entirely different purposes. They were looking at studying some of these cells and the secretion of these cells as a way to optimize how bovine lactate milk, right? How they express milk. How do you get existing cows to pump out more yield, right? That's what they were doing a lot of these research around. So what we did is we were able to pull that research in and accelerate from that point using the latest technologies that are available of today. And that's where we had some of our breakthroughs.
Yeah, and Max, you studied at MIT. So how was your background, your course there on biotechnology useful for you today?
I'll tell you what, my background is a little bit crazy. Not everybody would think that it would make sense, because my undergrad was actually in computer engineering.
Right.
And following that, I spent a lot of time on the executive side leading teams. But once we started this program, I knew very quickly that I had to get up to speed very quickly. And I need to know what it is that we're doing, how we're doing it, and so I can manage all of our scientists that we have. So I was able to enroll and take this course that helped me to accelerate my understanding of not just biotech, but how the business side of biotech works, because that's a big part of it. But so far, it's been instrumental in helping me to lead and work with the teams.
Yeah. So Fengru, one of the main reasons that you started a company was from a sustainability and animal welfare side. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So if you look at statistics, over the past 20 years, the population of cows has never increased, but the milk yield worldwide actually increased by 40%. And that is done through a lot of different ways. There are hormones that are being pumped into the cows, antibodies, antibiotics. So these things are not necessarily good for the cows. If you look at cows today, they're a lot larger than cows 20 years ago. So this is something that is quite worrying, not just for animal welfare, but for the environment as well. We all know that global methane emissions from cattle farming is 37%. So we need to be able to reduce that. Otherwise, it's not a sustainable way of feeding the next billion people that's coming onto the planet.
Yeah, and that methane stays quite heavily in our atmosphere and doesn't really escape. So it's causing a lot of problems to the heat of the planet. So yeah, it's a really important point. So when you think about cows, and they're also being given antibiotics, and therefore has lots of problems in the future where we could lead to antibiotic resistance, for example, by over-consuming on these animals. I think that's an important part that you'll be able to tackle, right? Because you don't need to put antibiotics inside your formula milk, for example, that you create. Was that also a key driver for you? Like, it doesn't include hormones and things like that. But the second part of that question is also, when you're looking at human milk includes antibodies, and do you plan on having that inside the milk as well? So sorry, there was two questions there.
That's okay. I'll start off with the hormones. So you're right in saying we can go directly to milk without having to go through the entire animal. So if we're able to control the environment where the cells can live in, the cells can lactate, we don't have to go through having hormones being pumped into the cows. On top of that, recently there's a lot of articles regarding chemical contaminants that are in groundwater. So this is a problem that is in the US as well as in Australia, because components like PFAS that is required to make Teflon is actually found in a lot of groundwater across the world. So different types of contaminants are found in the ruminants when they drink water, when they consume the grass. So if we can go directly from cell to milk, this can eliminate these problems. With regards to antibodies, this is something that our milk will not be emulating. The milk that we're creating is able to produce the nutritional profile of real milk. So this leaves out the antibodies, which would typically come from the mother's blood, or the microbiomes. The microbiomes come from the
On
mother's
the
gut.
gut. Yeah.
That's right. So we're focused more on the nutritional profile of the milk.
And when it comes to the antibodies, I mean, our scientists have extensive experience in this area. We will introduce this down the line alongside our partners if we find it that it's something that we want to do.
Yeah. I mean, what's your opinion? I think when you maybe talk to some people might be a bit creeped out about what you're doing. Some people are okay with it. And what is the sort of common questions that you get from the people who are creeped out, and how do you address that?
I think it's a good question because at the end of the day, what we need to do is educate a lot of our consumers. I mean, if you're looking at sustainable ways of doing things, I think if you look at what's creepy, it's creepy is what we're doing to these animals today. It's totally, really creepy that these cows are massively sized, and that's our method of consuming these products. I firmly believe that in time, we will look back and find it very strange that at one point in history, we were consuming milk from animals the way we are today.
Yeah, we're the only species that drinks milk from another species, which is kind of a bit odd.
That's right.
It is a bit odd, but at the end of the day, listen, less than 1% of the plant-based milks have been able to make a dent in the $700 billion dairy industry. So we know that at the end of the day, the consumers are still drinking it and still consuming it. For us, when we thought about this, we looked at how can we make an impact on the rest of that 99%? And using this type of technology and using science and biotech, if we can create real milk, we can replace what's currently out there. It's 95% more sustainable, and it's also not hurting an animal. It's not you're not doing it through bovine.
And not to mention, because our platform is able to create milk from all mammals, one of our early products or early targets would be human milk. So there are certain components in human milk that is not found in other places. Things like human milk oligosaccharides, things like human milk fats. These are things that are extremely important for the baby's brain growth and the baby's gut. So a lot of our potential partners are extremely interested in partnering with us to develop some of these products.
And obviously normal baby milk doesn't include that standard formula milk that you get today, doesn't include those elements.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's impossible right now. Where they're getting it is from bovine cow powder. What we're feeding our babies is cow milk powder mixed with vegetable extracts and a ton of other things. So what you may see initially, realistically, right? Because at the end of the day, we're not going to be giving anybody a glass of human breast milk as our first product. What you may end up seeing is maybe the existing formulations being bumped up a few notches when it comes to the nutritional value. So what you may see is that currently, instead of using cow-based milk powder, you might see something like what we're doing. It's healthier for the baby, better for the baby, and we're still not getting it, and we're not hurting cows to get to it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's, we want to promote the natural breastfeeding, and obviously there's mothers and couples that might find difficulty in that process with, babies latching on, etc. So this is a good alternative. Like if you're given the two options, right? I mean, do you have an opinion about, I think there's also another thing about having that closeness with the baby, especially for the mother when they're that young.
You're absolutely right. One thing that we do quite a bit is we encourage and champion breastfeeding, because there is no other alternative that comes close. It's more than just a nutritional value. There is a bond. There are other things you're passing on to the baby that's good for it, and we actually are very cognizant of that. What we're looking to build as a technology, I would say, is more of a supplement to the existing industry, and also, hey, listen, we have to admit that there are already infant nutrition companies that are out there, like Formula. How can we maybe tap onto those areas? But first and foremost, breastfeeding is something that we never want to discourage or want to push that side.
Yeah, as much as we push breastfeeding, even in Singapore here, statistics show that mothers who exclusively breastfeed at 6 months is less than 1%.
Wow.
So
Okay.
most mothers still rely on infant formula, and we're just trying to make infant formula better.
Why do you think it's such a low percentage in Singapore?
I think a lot of mothers just don't lactate enough, and a lot of mothers go back to work.
Yeah.
So the hospitals, when they check the mothers out, they encourage breastfeeding. They have classes. It's really important, but it's just very difficult for mothers to keep up to that.
And by the way, I want to say that these are statistics we've picked up here in Singapore, but those statistics are not restricted to Singapore. Sure. This is a general trend globally in the Western US as well as Europe as well.
Yeah. So I think I read, talking about stats, somewhere that there's about 45 billion is the market for, is that formula milk? And it's set to be 103 by 2026, roughly. Is that right?
You got it.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. It's one of the fastest growing dairy segments, as a matter of fact. And it still falls under dairy segments because that's where they get most of their milk from, the formula from. But yeah, it is. And it's also one of the highest valued dairy components.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? So it's a good arena to play in, I would say, as a company such as yours. So thinking about like the product side now, and when do you feel that you'll be ready for commercialization of your products? You've been running now for about 1.5 years, roughly. Yeah.
Sure. I think when it comes to product on the market, there are a few things to consider. Regulatory is one of them, and we are working with the regulatory folks to drive this. And the other side is our partners. So we are a very B2B company, and when we build our bioreactors alongside the industry, they will be going through that journey with us and putting these SKUs on the market. We are looking at maybe 18 to 24 months. But I'm going to tell you, once it happens, it's going to be pretty big. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, awesome. And I think you spoke before about you've got a mini scale bioreactor at the moment, and so you're basically testing on that. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when you look at bioreactors, you always want to customize and work out all the kinks at a small scale because they're very expensive. So we're looking at a lot of the instruments and so forth around these different bioreactors, the QA, QC tools that are built into it. We want to get those right, and that's what we're doing today. We're working on a 5-liter scale, and in time, once we have this dialed in, it can move up to 5,000 or 50,000 liter scale, which is a commercial scale.
Yeah. Could you talk about the basics just for people who would like to know what is the basics of what a bioreactor actually does?
Sure. Let me jump into that. So bioreactor, you can think of it like a giant steel tank. If you go to a beer fermentation place, those tanks are made for fermentation. But for cell-based food companies or cell-based companies, it would look like a similar steel tank. And the inside would contain the right temperature, the right pH for the cells to live in, so they can produce or multiply like you want them to.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. So, Max, you also mentioned you were looking at the regulatory side. I think you carry the same attorneys, the IP attorneys, as Impossible Foods and Memphis Meat. So. Have they been giving you, I mean, do you envision that there will be sort of regulatory issues going forward? Or I think the IP side is very important, that you have that protection, especially of like how these other B2B companies will start using it and licensing it going forward. But it'd be great if you can talk a bit about that.
Sure. So the regulatory side is very important for us. And in fact, one of our business units focuses specifically on regulatory. It's important for us to drive the regulatory here in Singapore with the Singapore Food Agency. And of course, we are working with our team in the US that's driving the regulatory side with the bodies in the US. It's very important for us to make sure that we capture these initial markets and get some approvals very early on. And when I say early on, it'll still take another 18 months before we get these approvals. However, we are working very closely with them, learning what dossiers are required and making sure that we curate and write those out. This is a journey that we're walking together, and this is something that happens when you are a market leader in a specific area. I mean, we're the world's first company doing something like this, and as a result, we also have to drive it.
Yeah. And so have you closed your Series A now, or are you still during? Not Series A, your seed round. Sorry, that you've just done, right? And you've raised quite a bit at the moment to help you fund this investment, because scientists, the number of scientists must be, and having a lab can get quite expensive. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are very fortunate that very recently we wrapped up our seed round, which is our second funding round. We raised money last year as well.
Okay.
And very fortunate to have the same folks as well as some new players that came on board on this round. But you're right, the cost of scientists and facilities can be quite expensive. Now, one of our unfair advantages, I guess you could say, is it being here in Singapore. So we have actually tremendous support from the Singapore government in a lot of this. So we are getting some of our payroll offset these days because of the COVID issue. So they're helping out quite a bit. But on top of that, we're very fortunate that we just won the most prestigious prize in the world by the Temasek Foundation, which is $1 million. It's very exciting. That just happened a week and a half ago. This is all non-diluted funds and a lot of other support that we're getting here locally.
Congratulations. That's a nice boost to have.
It sure is.
Yeah, it's been tremendous.
And your other investors are like David Young, who I know, and Prince Khalid's fund, KBW Ventures, right?
Yes, you're right. So we are very fortunate to have Prince Khalid support from KBW. As you mentioned, Green Monday Ventures. David's been wonderful. We also have a few other amazing folks, including Artesian, which is out of Australia.
Okay.
Am I missing anybody?
And CPT Capital from the UK.
Yeah, from the UK, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And New Lunar Ventures, I think, was the other one.
Yes,
right.
From Davis, California. So
yeah.
we have some support from there as well.
Yeah, I saw from his portfolio he had some interesting, as well as sort of environmental agriculture. He also had like SaaS companies that he's invested in. So I think it's good to have that, especially with your background, Max, in cloud computing. I think that's quite, and actually yours as well, Fengru, with Google and Salesforce. It's interesting how we're seeing the technology side merged with, bioscience, and, there's certain countries are definitely hubs for doing that. San Francisco.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, one of the things I can tell you that have been really wonderful is being able to tap on New Luna's expertise on not just talking about sustainability and so forth, but measuring it. They're very big on measuring out your impact. And with real numbers, with real statistics, and the exercises that we have been going through together with New Luna has been very valuable for us because it helps us to dig much, much deeper into what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the size of the impact that it's actually creating.
And then those stats can then go to your B2B customers and say, look, if you switch out this ingredient, it's going to make this much impact. And then when you talk to consumers in your marketing, you can say, by making out this switch, it will, you're doing something good to the environment. It's not just another drain to the system.
Absolutely. And it's also, like I said, aside from sustainable, it's also more efficient. I mean, imagine being able to have bioreactors with steel tanks that you can just put it anywhere in the world. You don't have to worry about having a farm. You don't have to be in a place where you need agricultural stuff around you. You can be in the middle of a city somewhere and you can have fresh milk coming out. That's how we envision the future, is being able to have these type of dairy products anywhere in the world. As long as you have fresh water and electricity, you should be able to have access to it.
Yeah, I did an interview with a company called Back of the Yards Algae Sciences, and they're actually based in Chicago in the old meatpacking industry, and they've got this massive bioreactor. I don't know how many liters, it's huge, but they've got access to it if they want to have the investment to basically go and create this out of, and they've got, again, like you, they've got a smaller version that they're testing. But like you say, like there's so many different places where you can set up, right, and create these innovations quite easily with the right investment.
No, well, you're right. You're no longer as restricted as you would be in the past, and that's what's really nice about this technology.
Thinking about cell-based food, like I've asked a few other companies this, how much in the future do you think that will be seen to be acceptable when it becomes, say, cell-based meat, first of all, especially with, you know, the background that you have?
You know what? I love this question, and I can tell you why I like this question, because anybody you spoke to previously said, you know, the infrastructure isn't there. There's going to be a huge issue with acceptance. It's going to be 10 years out minimum. All these discussions are happening, but how far away it actually is. And then all of a sudden, about a week ago, KFC announced somewhere in Russia, I believe, that they're going to do chicken nuggets using bioprinting. And that's cell-based. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, what? Things are moving faster than people realize. I think that's very important to understand. And I think that's how, as we know, technology folks, that's actually normal. It's actually a normal thing in technology for things to be moving a lot faster. And I think that trend is happening now in food as well.
Yeah, totally. So what is the, do you see, you know, obviously you've got cow's milk, human milk. Are you seeing any other types of animals, like, I don't know, goat's milk or something like that? Or
Absolutely. We're doing goats, sheep, camels. I mean, there is a lot of different work that our team is working on, and these are some things much further down the line that we will be rolling out.
And to add to that, we have a foundation, TurtleTree Foundation, who's working with milk from endangered species. So the Smithsonian has reached out, Smithsonian from the DC, and their zoo actually has some problems providing snow leopard milk for snow leopard babies.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
yeah, it's quite incredible, because they have to separate the mothers from the babies, because the moms tend to attack their babies in captivity. So they have to separate them. And the babies are not able to receive the proper nutrition that they need. So this is something that our foundation is working on.
That's cool. Yeah, very good.
And we're doing something similar here in Asia, in Sumatra, for elephants as well. Elephant milk is the most nutrient-dense milk in the world, and it's very, very difficult for baby elephants when their mothers are poached, and killed, to survive in orphanages. So this is another passionate project our team is working on, that they can help to create the elephant milk for those orphanages.
Yeah, awesome. That's really good. And so finally, where do you see the long-term vision of your company going?
I think long-term, realistically, we see a lot of partnerships and collaborations with existing dairy industry in being able to change the way things are done today. I mean, at the end of the day, many of these big companies, they don't hate the planet. They don't hate animals. They just don't have any other solutions out there that they can use to provide their customers with what they're already used to. In a different way, right? So that's how we see ourselves long-term. Long-term, we want to be the biggest milk company in the world that doesn't actually doesn't make any of the milk ourselves. That's really where we want to be.
Yeah, so referring to that, we model ourselves after a tech company, ARM Semiconductors. They're the largest chip company in the world that doesn't make a single chip. So we really look up to the ARM folks. In fact, one of their founders is one of our advisors. So they work mostly on a licensing and royalty model, and they want to enable consumers to make a conscious choice as well. So we will have a TurtleTree logo on every carton of milk that gets shipped out in the future. So this allows consumers to make a conscious choice about the circular economy, how the milk is made, etc.
Yeah, very good. I think, ARM now replaced the Apple chips, haven't they? The Intel chips in Apple.
Yeah, it's significant.
Yeah, good technology. So just on that point that you're making about the, being the biggest milk company without milking cows, how would you plan to work with, or maybe not your company or other companies, how they plan to work with existing farmers that are already, you know, facing a lot of trouble, obviously, right now.
Right. I mean, it's a good question, and I think there's a good answer for that. I thought about it, and of course, there's no perfect answer for this. But a lot of the things, the raw ingredients that go into a lot of these different products or these media, for example, or so forth, need to be grown somewhere. And I do believe a lot of these farmers can be an important part of that solution. They can be the folks out there who are pumping out and growing all the raw ingredients that are necessary that goes into the system.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck in the future years, and yeah, looking to see how your product evolves as well. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
You.
Wonderful to chat with you guys.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.